I wanted to go over just really quick how to Playblast stuff, which is basically getting the official way to like get the good timing of your animations, as well as some of the assignments that require Playblast instead of a render. So basically, Playblasting is if you right-click on the time slider, yes, time slider, that's the word, and you go to Playblast here, this option, just to open up the settings. They always show up in a different video. So there's like three-ish things that you want to check here. So one, you want to make sure that the scale is set to 1. By default, it's usually at 0.5, which basically means that, say your settings are full HD, it's going to render at half full HD. So, if you're trying to get like a specific render size and you're using your render settings for it, you want to make sure that's set to 1. The other thing that you want to look at is display size. By default, this is set to from window. Now, what that's basically going to do is if your window is shaped like this is the size of this is like the size and the shape of the Playblast you're going to get. It depends entirely on how your viewport is set up, which is wildly unpredictable and weird, which is why you don't want to use the from window option. So normally I've never found use for custom. I'll usually just use from render settings. Basically that's, just whatever you have set down here for your image size. It's going to grab that, use that for your Playblast, and everything will be fine and good with the world, assuming that you have your scale set to 1. Other things to look at are format. So you can do either a QuickTime video, an AVI, or an image sequence. For some reason, I have been having a lot of issues exporting to QuickTime and AVI. They give you options for, a bunch of different encodings for all of them. For some reason, I've just been having a lot of issues with all of these. So what I've been doing, and it's a really stupid workaround, is exporting to an image sequence. And you can, pretty much grab whatever. I usually use JPEGs because I can. And then that's more or less it, honestly. They have options for frame padding the same way as you would have those options in your render settings. You can have the option save to file, which is usually what you do if you actually want to keep these and not just do a quick test. And then you can, pick where you want your stuff to go. I feel like I'm going crazy. Yeah, so that's Playblasting, and it'll do whatever you have your time slider set to. So if this is like 1 to 120, it's going to do frames 1 to 120. If this is, 50 here, it's going to do 1 to 50, etc., etc. So that's Playblasting. I'm going to go ahead and just apply that, show you what it looks like. So you can see here, it's kind of cropped the screen. This is what the... Oh, cool. I get a awkward GIF. So this is what it'll give you. This is apparently fcheck is just some weird thing that'll compile image sequences on your computer. I have no idea, but this is just the image sequence that it's come up with. And this is basically a Playblast. You would just need to combine these in some other program. I use DaVinci Resolve because it's free and it's what I got. But if you have, After Effects Premiere, that all works as well. So that's honestly pretty much the basics of Playblasting. Again, it's the only way to fully ensure that whatever timing you're seeing is correct. So there's a few options. Let me see. Okay. So the time slider does some weird stuff sometimes if you're displaying stuff. So okay, and this is just sound really dumb, but when I was learning animation, I for some reason didn't realize that this play button was even here because I'm an idiot. So I was just like, let me just scrub through and test my timing, and I got pretty good at keeping the timing accurate. Don't do that wildly inaccurate. The other way that you can preview your timing is with these little playback controls down here. These are affected by 1 or 2 weird settings, and sometimes they'll have pretty aggressively irritating effects on your animation. So if you right-click on the time slider, go to playback speed, and right now it's set to real time. Basically what this is going to do is it's going to forcibly play back your animation in real time. If it needs to skip frames to do it, it will. It's prioritizing real time. This is very bad for Sims, which have to run every frame or else they break. Otherwise, sometimes if you have like a lot of stuff in your scene, it's like really geometry heavy or something, this still might not be accurate. These two are pretty much the only options you want to use if you're doing Sims. Play every frame free. Usually, like for something like this, it runs way faster. what this is doing is it's playing every frame as fast as it can process it. So it doesn't care if it's real time. It's just like we're gonna play it. We're gonna go for it. Let's do it. So this looks really, really fast. If we go in and set playback speed to every frame max real time, you can see it gets way slower. And again, you don't know if there's anything, like at what point does your scene become too intensive where this is slowing down. You can't actually tell. So you pretty much always want to do a play blast, especially before you start, rendering animation, but like play blasts as often as you need to get like accurate timing on your animation. So that's more or less more time slidery stuff. The only other thing that I want to talk about is cleaning up and like how to make play blasts look nicer. So one, let's focus. If you look on the, oops, it's fiddling with a dice and I just threw it across the room. If you look at the sort of bottom of the sail here, like the edges of the clouds, there's an option right here for multi-sample anti-aliasing. If you click on that, it's going to anti-alias your viewport. I don't find this to be particularly memory intensive, so honestly, I turn it on. I find, one, it makes things look way nicer, and B, kind of a lot of times is also easier to use sometimes, or like just if you're looking at like a bunch of thin or small objects, it just makes it easier to look at. You can also turn on motion blur, which I don't know. This I'm not in love with on play blasts. I find it very distracting, to be honest, so I usually ignore that. The other thing that I like, and you'll notice that like on the dock here, is the screen space ambient occlusion, and that basically is just like, hey, if stuff is close to each other, we're going to give it a light shadow. It's more obvious on, if you, okay, the heck with it. Let's, because like it's more obvious on something with like a ball and on a plane or something like that. So I'm like, cool, let's make a ball on a plane. But I usually like to turn on the anti-aliasing and the screen space, ambient occlusion. Alright, so you can see the ambient occlusion there. It's not, hang on, there we go, like right under here. So it's not entirely accurate, obviously, as a shadow, but it does give you a little bit better idea of like, oh, these are close to each other, because right now you kind of can't tell. So that's, again, sort of what I like to do to make the stuff look nicer. The other thing that you want to look at, so if this is our camera, you want to make sure that you don't have anything selected. If you play blast something with like objects selected, it's weirdly distracting. You also want to make sure that if you have gone in and done a resolution gate, if you have this up, so let me do a gross play blast really quick, just for fun. So if you play blast it like this with the resolution gate in it, it also just looks really sloppy. You're cutting off some like this is the only thing that would render. So this is just like weird extra sort of dead space in the frame, and then this boat is selected. It just looks really sloppy and unprofessional. So here we have our very awkward, can you hear the cat in the background screaming and chasing things across the floor? So it just looks a little bit unprofessional, and it takes half a second to, just go in, view, camera settings, no gate, and just deselect the boat. When in doubt, I usually just select one of these random cameras here. If you have any lights in your scene or just other random cameras, you would also want to turn those off. Apart from that, that's pretty much all there is to play blasting and viewing your stuff in the scene. So go forth and animate and play blast and stuff.